To Ukraine now, where a Russian glide bomb attack on a hospital has injured at least 7 people. The attack targeted the main hospital in the city of Kharkiv in Ukraine's northeast. Authorities evacuated dozens of patients. It's the latest in a long series of attacks on civilian targets since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. This comes as Ukraine's president prepares to meet his American counterpart in Washington on Friday. Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to ask for more military aid, especially Tomahawk cruise missiles. And so far, Donald Trump has not said no. I'm pleased now to welcome Arseniy Yatsenyuk. He's the former Prime Minister of Ukraine and chairman of the Kyiv Security Forum. Tonight, he joins us from Brussels. Welcome back to DW, Mr. Yatsenyuk. Now, let's start with the latest. Overnight, Russian bombs hit Kharkiv's main hospital, wounding patients. Nearly 3 years into the full-scale war, attacks on civilian infrastructure continue every day almost. How do you interpret this latest strike?
Well, Putin is not ready to cut any kind of deal. So he wants to escalate, and his strategic goal hasn't changed completely. So the idea which he is obsessed with is to take over Ukraine, to undermine NATO, and actually to split the unity in the European Union is still ongoing. It means that we have to push hard, to press on Putin, and we urgently need to deliver an additional security supplemental for Ukraine, to wrap up sanctions against Putin, to be on the same page, I mean the European Union and the Americans, in pressing on Putin and China. And we still have very high chance to win this war, but actions are needed.
Let's look at these actions. After brokering a ceasefire in the Middle East, U.S. President Donald Trump is shifting his attention back to the war in Ukraine now. Do you think he's serious about his threat to send Tomahawks to Ukraine if Vladimir Putin doesn't settle this war?
I just came back from D.C., from Washington. And I can tell you for sure that Washington is slightly different than it was 12 months ago. But we have a very big space for maneuver. And I believe it's important to realize that we have a very high chance to get along with President Trump and actually to make President Trump to get this Nobel Peace Prize. As you just mentioned, the US administration, together with the Western world and with the free world, managed to get the real ceasefire in Gaza. Now, I hope that the US administration will refocus and redouble its both attention and its efforts to get the real peace. And I want to reiterate once again, the real peace in Ukraine, a fair, just and durable peace, not on Putin's term. Because after what happened in Anchorage, it's clear for the Trump administration that Putin played President Trump. And the President of the United States, he is not ready to be humiliated, and he will definitely push back, and he will do his best in order to help Ukraine, as this is the best ever investment in the US national security. So the mood in Washington, my reading of the mood is Washington, it's much better than I expected.
I have 2 questions there, picking up on some of the things you just said.
You've asked about Tomahawks. You've asked about Tomahawks.
Yeah.
Frankly, initially, I was thinking that it's just more for the media and for the publicity. But let me put it this way, what I know. It is not a hot air. It is not a hot air. And we can get some kind of deliverables. Let me say you this way.
Okay, and you said that you expect U.S. President Donald Trump to do everything he can to put an end to this war. What would that be? What can he do? What is he willing to do? How far is he willing to go?
It's up to the President of the United States to decide, but he has a lot of tools in his hands. The first and most important one is to provide a security aid to Ukraine. Either it is to be a kind of loan, or it is to be kind of land lease. It's on the table on the desk of the President of the US. The second one is to ramp up sanctions. Let me remind you that we still enjoy a bipartisan support in the United States. Under the latest polls of Harvard-Harris pollster, more than 73% of Republicans and 72% of of Democrats support military aid to Ukraine. And there is an ongoing process in the US Senate over an idea to wrap up sanctions and to impose secondary sanctions on Russia. 84 senators already co-sponsored this bill. The third issue which the US president has in his hands is the pressure on China. And it's important to have our European allies on the same page with Americans. If you exert, I mean, the US and the European Union, if you exert this kind of pressure on China, and China is an accomplice and China provides a lifeline to Russia, we can bear some kind of fruits in these kind of endeavors. And last but not least is India. The US administration imposed the punitive sanctions against India. My take is better to follow a kind of incentivized approach towards India and to convince Prime Minister Modi to wean itself of the Russian dependence on oil and substitute the Russian oil with an American one. So to put it in a nutshell, the US has a lot of tools and leverage to help Ukraine to win this war. And it's crystal clear that it's in the national security interest of the United States to make Ukraine win. And the same goes with the European Union.
President Zelenskyy is going to meet up with Donald Trump in Washington on Friday. You say there are a lot of tools at his disposal. What outcome are you hoping for there then?
Definitely much better than we experienced 6 months ago. You remember this notorious meeting in the Oval Office. Things has changed dramatically and you know, in a positive manner. President Zelenskyy got along with President Trump, and President Trump has learned a lot from his talk with Putin, because he expected to get some kind of concessions out of Putin in Alaska, rolling out the red carpet, providing a limo sharing. But in the end, Putin just rejected his kind of good demeanors and his acting in a good faith. So my guess is that after the meeting in the Oval between President Zelenskyy and President Trump, we will have some real deliverables. Let's wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see, because Donald Trump is notoriously unpredictable, and you know, his motto still is America first. And that's why I want to look at Europe, because they're also a key player here, of course. The European military support for Ukraine has dropped sharply. It's down 43% in July and August compared to earlier this year. Why do you think this is, and what could be the consequences for Ukraine?
There are a number of reasons. The first one, it's all about cash and money. And that's the very reason why we urgently need to do something with the Russian frozen assets. Let me remind you that here in Belgium, Russian sovereign assets have been allocated, and it's around $200 billion, and an overall amount of Russian cash that have been frozen is around $300 billion. So I was told that it's a bad mood to mention the word confiscation. Okay, let me put it this way. Russian frozen assets has to be urgently used in order to finance Ukraine's need as a special purpose vehicle, as a collateral. You can dub it the way you want, but Russia has to pay for this war. It is about justice. And that's the very reason why we urge our European friends to use the Russian frozen assets as a collateral, or to confiscate these Russian frozen assets in order to provide financial and military aid to Ukraine. If European Union is to undertake these kind of efforts, both Americans and Brits will follow suit. Because in the US and in the United Kingdom, there is around $10 billion of Russian sovereign assets that are frozen. Another issue is the capacity. It's all about the capacity and production. Mm-hmm. And it's important to realize for everyone that we are living in a completely different world, and we don't have the time to waste it. So we need to speed up the process, the production process and procurement process. So these are actually two most important issues that are on the table.
Yeah, that was Arseniy Yatsenyuk, the former Ukrainian Prime Minister. Pleasure to have you on the show tonight, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.